Sure, yeah. So we started out with, so it was difficult for us actually to think about how do we empirically assess some of these ideas. Because, from Becker and terror management's perspective, fear of death is a constant. Fear of death is in the
Yeah,
limbic system. That's just there. I mean, that's part of being a creature, being an animal. So, okay, well, you see, it's not really a variable. Well, if you can't manipulate variables, you can't really do experiments. Uh, and we somehow stumbled on the idea, well, maybe if these ideas were correct, that maybe if you make people think about their mortality at a conscious level, maybe we'd see an intensified clinging to one's belief system, clinging to one's bases of self-worth, clinging to close relationships more so. And so we developed what's called the mortality salience paradigm, where you just remind some people of their own mortality and other people of other negative things or neutral things, and then see if, in fact, when people are reminded of mortality, does it intensify their investment in their meaning system? If you're a patriotic, Australian, do you become more, you know, defensive of Australia and more pro-Australia? Those sorts of things. And we started finding these kinds of things. Uh, and so, it was encouraging that it seemed to support one of the basic ideas of terror management theory, and that Becker posited. Um, and a German thanatologist named Randolph Oxman tried to replicate our work after it was published in JPSB, and it appeared. There was an article in the New York Times about our work, our empirical work with mortality salience, leading to kind of sort of more defensive world of your worldview, that type of thing. And he didn't replicate. And we were like, okay, well, what's going on there? So we asked him about the details of what he had done, and he put people through like a 30-minute guided imagery of their own death and imagining being in a coffin type of thing. And we just had people answer two real simple questions about their own death that they spent very little time on, usually write a sentence or two on. So we were like, okay, so what he's doing is way more intense and powerful, and he's not getting
that's right.
increased worldview defense, whereas we were with the subtle reminder of mortality. What's going on here? That led us to the proximal distal distinction,
Right.
uh, which we then elaborated on. So the idea is that when you're consciously thinking about death, you just want to calm yourself down. You just want to say, no, I'm young, I'm fine, I'm healthy, I'm eating kale, I'm eating the latest superfoods, uh, and you just want to stop thinking about death, right? And so you want to distract yourself from it or convince yourself that's long off, don't worry about it. Those are what we call proximal defenses. And so that's the frontline defense. So, if a terrorist enters a room, a building you're in, you're not going to worry about your worldview and, hold up a flag. You're going to like run under a desk or try to get out of there. So the proximal thing is more for when death seems imminent or it's right there in front of you. It's in your focal attention. And whereas the worldview defense and self-esteem and close relationships, that's keeping death out of consciousness. So a subtle reminder will
Mm,
tend to activate those things. And so we started playing around with that and looking at a stronger versus weaker mortality salience induction. And the weaker one will tend to have the stronger effects. So if you get in a car accident and you almost died, first couple hours, you're just thinking about, I need a safer car. I need to make sure I'm wearing my seatbelt, and all of that stuff. Hours later, maybe even the next day, death is sort of percolating outside of consciousness. That's when you're going to be thinking about, I got to really do some better podcasts. I got to get some more article. That's when your meaning system and your self-worth and your close relationships become more important to you, and you're going to bolster those. So that's sort of the basic thing that we learned, that there are these two different. And I like to say that basically the only thing that we added to Becker was that, and we just stumbled on that because if somebody didn't replicate what we were doing, we had to think about why that was and figure out that process of proximal defenses versus the distal ones.